Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hi. It's nice to see you. Thank you for coming out on this awful, cold, miserable day. At least it isn't raining, but when Igor said that, it started raining, so I'm not going to. It is technically the most wonderful time of the year, I have been told. It's also the most extremely wretched, dark, miserable time of the year. And this is why, certainly in the northern hemisphere, this time of year is a time of extremes. There's darkness and there is light. And they are in pretty decent balance, except for the fact that the preponderance of nature is not very light at this time of year. It's dangerous and hungry. It's out to get you. It's dark. There are wolves outside. And humans have got to kind of grit their teeth and get through it while suffering through the privations of darkness and cold. And that is really the reason that we have all the celebrations in the season that we do have. I can't think of a culture that gets through winter without some festival of light. There's Diwali, there's Hanukkah, there's everything related to Christmas. In pagan times, they had this mad debauch called Saturnalia. Have you heard about this? Yeah, there's a couple of Saturnalia types here. I can spot you. I know who you are just from the looks on your faces. And it was Saturnalia was the original festival of the season. It was propagated throughout the Roman Empire, and the idea is basically eat way too much, drink way too much, be debauched. As it moved into later years and spread throughout Europe, and different European influences came in there became this thing called the Lord of Misrule, who was basically the party planner. And the Lord of Misrule was, it would be a peasant or maybe a young man, but they dressed him up like he was like royalty or a member of the clergy. And he was the party planner, he was the party guy. You'd follow him around and he would encourage chaos. He was the party dude. And that was the big festival of the season, and it got to the point that the debauch was there. It's always been there, and it's important to have warmth, light, parties, eating, and company in this season, because this is the time of year that people in the village are going to freeze to death, or starve to death, or get really depressed and miserable. So lots of traditions formally are based around eating, drinking, making sure your neighbours are okay, going around and entertaining your neighbours. Caroling is the most sanitized version of this. Wassail is a different one altogether. It's caroling came out of wassail, and wassail is you go around and demand drink, and you'll do a little party for them, and they give you drink. This is the basic idea of it. And amidst all this chaos, kind of Christianity took over. So and they deliberately decided in 350 of the Common Era, Pope Julius, the guy behind the Julian calendar, fixed the date of Christmas as December 25th on the Julian calendar. Then the Gregorian calendar came along, and they celebrated on the 7th of January. But they fixed the date of Christmas. But right at the end of Saturnalia, so it's always been, and this was a day of prayer and nursing your hangover. And that was how Pope Julius originally had envisioned it. And so it has always been a season of extremes and contrasts. So so you do your massive celebration, then you have your recovery day afterwards, and that's the day you celebrate Jesus' birthday. Somehow St. Nicholas got into the mix, and that happened around 325 of the Common Era. Listen, you're getting a history lecture, and there will be a test later. Around that time is when the Council of Nicaea happened. This is St. Nicholas, Bishop Nicholas of Myra, which is in modern-day Turkey. And he was one of the early leaders of the church in the 300s, when it started to get formalized. And he was invited, like a lot of the significant bishops, to the Council of Nicaea, which is where they decided what books were going to be in the Bible, and they threw out the Gospel of Thomas the Doubter, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, all the really interesting Gospels they threw out. And they decided which books were going to be in there. And Nicholas was one of the people there. They also decided on the Nicene Creed, what the actual beliefs of the church were going to be. And there were heated debates. And there are no children here. People on the video, hide your children. Nicholas was a badass. I mean, he was a serious. He got into a heated argument with Bishop Arius of Egypt about. Bishop Arius was going, Jesus, nice guy. I mean, not like he's God or anything, but he's a nice guy. And Nicholas said, "You take that back." And he's going, no, it's what I think. And Nicholas was saying, "Listen, I'll punch you." No, punching is too good for the likes of you. I'll slap you like a wayward child. And this is what went down. He slapped Bishop Arius like a wayward child, got thrown off the Council of Nicaea for being rowdy in bad behaviour, and he was in the doghouse for a while, and was broadly encouraged not to slap anybody like a wayward child, or for that matter, slap any wayward children. And so he became associated at that point with being kind to children. He subsequently became the patron saint of an awful lot of things. There's sailors, children, pawnbrokers, and prostitutes. Partly because he's most famous for like dropping gold down the chimney to save women who were on the verge of being sort of sold into slavery by their families because they couldn't afford them. So he threw dowries basically down chimneys to save people, and this is where the idea of Nicholas as the giver took place. His days, December 5th. December 5th is St. Nicholas's Eve. December 6th is the actual St. Nicholas's day. So he became essentially, he was in the season, but he had nothing to do with Christmas. I'll tell you how he got involved with Christmas in a minute. But first, the miracle that made him a bishop, that made this bishop into a saint, is the most gruesome story I've ever heard in any French folk song for children. There is, I don't have an example of it, but there is this very tinkly little song in French that is sung by French children, speaking about how a butcher murdered these 3 children and stuck them in pickle barrels, and along comes Bishop Nicholas, and he resurrects them, and this is his miracle that enabled him to become a saint. So this is Bishop Nicholas resurrecting the children, the pickled boys, and this is it's messed up. It's not at all, sort of Frosty the Snowman, but this was still a totally separate thing from Christmas. It wasn't until some considerable time later, about 202 years ago, that the 2 seasons kind of got conflated. The main reason that they were spread out was because of this historical perspective in a feudal society where, so there's not much work to be done in winter, you just got to get through it. So they spread out a whole lot of celebrations to make sure that there were lots of checkpoints, to make sure that everyone was doing all right, and they were being well fed, and there were plenty of entertainment. Then the Industrial Revolution took place, and it's like there's always plenty of work, but we can't have you taking all these holidays. So they started to push these holidays together, and that's when St. Nicholas got pushed into the Christmas season rather than having his own day. And the guy responsible, Clement Seymour, so the modern Christmas was essentially created in New York in the 1820s. This is a visit from St. Nicholas And this is what he looked like. This is one of many different illustrations of the poem. It started to get put out into newspapers, reprinted every year, starting around 1823. And Clement Seymour lived in Midtown Manhattan, which was not like it is today. He lived in his aunt's estate. He inherited his aunt's estate. They had a stately home called Chelsea, which subsequently became the district of Chelsea in Midtown Manhattan. And there were lots of big houses with wealthy people in Midtown Manhattan at the time. Down south, in downtown, it was full of immigrants from everywhere, from Germany, Ireland, England, all over the place. And all of them had their different traditions of that wassailing, the Saturnalia type thing, of going out and knocking on people's doors and demanding food and drink. They all had their different traditions, but they all came from different places, and they all thought, well, this is what we do at Christmas time. So they would all go to the big houses in Midtown Manhattan, starting St. Nicholas's Day, going through the 12th night, an entire month of drunken immigrants banging on your door demanding food and drink. They were getting ticked off in Midtown Manhattan, frankly. Clement Seymour wrote the poem, for his kids. I mean, he wrote it as a children's poem. But his friends who owned newspapers kept reprinting it every year because immigrants learned English from newspapers, and they also learned how we do things here from newspapers. So this poem for kids said, stay at home, good things are going to come down your chimney. And so there's a little propagandist use of the which was the night before Christmas. That was, this is how we do things here. Please stop banging on our doors and demanding food and beer. That's not how it's done. We stay at home, we closet together, and we just and we wait for the good things to happen. We don't go out and cause a ruckus. And that's essentially why St. Nicholas is now part of that Christmas tradition. But that's what he looked like. He looked like a bishop to begin with, and in many European traditions, he's still like a bishop. And then he became this right jolly old elf. How he went from a saint to elf, I do not know, but he was an elf that sort of looked like that, smoked a pipe. His coat could have been any color at all. It was often green, but he was, because there's another tradition of green man that he was sort of associated with, this kind of pagan thing. Green being one of the colors of Christmas. He wore a green coat in many representations. And that's how it was until the year my dad was born, 1931. This is where Santa Claus became what he subsequently became. And it was, whoa, did you see that? It was really fast. My hat's off to the pause that refreshes. This ad fixed in the public consciousness what Santa looks like. It was done by a guy called Haddon Sundblom, and it was done for the Coca-Cola Corporation, and whose signature colors are red and white, so he was wearing red and white. And he's got that bowl like a cherry, right jolly on. My hat's off, it's tucked in that bobble hat in the top. The other St. Nicholas has often had like Russian-style hats on. And so it's 1931. It's a very, very modern creation. So most of the time he was more like a bishop. And he used to hang out with complete, he used to hang out with a complete monster. Most of us have heard of this guy, Krampus. Krampus now happens on St. Nicholas's Eve. Just a quick poll here. Has everyone's seen what a Krampus looks like? There's a bunch of Krampus decorations on this little tree. He's got horns. He's got a very long toe. In Germanic tradition, he's been associated with St. Nicholas since the 1600s. He goes around and essentially, I keep hitting them. There we go.
Oh.
Yeah, seriously, this is what the Krampus looks like. He's devilish in appearance. He's like a satyr. He has a tremendously long and creepy tongue. He carries with him a fistful of birch sticks that he uses for discipline, and he's also chained. He's often represented as a chained demon, so the chains are for him, but the chains are also used for very wayward children to bind up the child. And then he also carries a sack in which he will carry off the exceptionally bad children and either eat them or drop them in a well down to hell.
Did you say, before you said put them in the well, what did you say?
That's a really good question. What else? In some Krampus stories, if you're a bad kid, he will eat you. He will eat the children.
That's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Will he eat them or drop them in the well?
Yeah. Now this is only if they're really bad kids. This isn't kids who don't forget to do their homework. And we're talking here about kids that sort of the kind of kid that you just really wish would get theirs.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, and he serves a purpose. In this particular case, you've got Saint Nicholas, who's the good cop, and you've got Krampus, who's the bad cop. He's not a total monster. He's got a job, and he does it. And the job is essentially to keep people in some sort of order. A whole lot of traditions, actually, around this time of year are, be diligent, do your work, be careful, don't stray from the path, don't go into the woods after dark. All things that in a harsh winter environment can kill you. And to keep your house in order as well, because that can also kill you in a 3-month winter in northern Europe or in Iceland or somewhere. You've got to keep a sense of order together, and fear is a great way to keep people in order. And the Krampus is that agent. He's often regarded as being like a complete monster. He's not. He's a creepy looking guy. And
what was he doing on the rocking horse with the little girl though?
He's got the. I think it might be a little boy. They dressed him differently.
Well, is he rewarding him with the rocking horse?
No. He's about to hit them with birch sticks. He's
meeting somewhere that little boys play.
Yeah.
He's not rewarding the little boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is just one. There was a great tradition of putting Krampus on postcards. Right around the time of like universal mail, when people were, when countries were putting together a mail service, postcards became the thing, and Christmas cards became the thing, so you could put them in the mail. And in Poland and in Austria and Germany, there were many designs, and some of them got whimsical. But behind them all was this notion that there's an agent of retribution there. And if you really deserve it, it's coming for you. Rather than have it, so if you're really bad, Santa won't give you quite so many presents. It's not a stern enough punishment for real offences. And it's born of this folk life tradition of be afraid of some things because that's the way you survive. So that's
a little bit less about morality, a little bit more that this is what you have to do to survive. Not so much
there is an argument to be made that morality comes out of survival tactics. And for the greater good of a group of people who live together. And a lot of folklore is based on fear. If you read any of the Grimm fairy tales, for example, they're folkloric, they're terrifying, they're much worse than the kid stories, and they weren't kid stories in the first place. But they're much worse than the sanitized children's versions of these stories. Now, Krampus was exclusive for several hundred years. He was a very regional thing. There were parts of the Palatine, but parts of Greater Germany essentially, Austria, Poland, some southern reaches of Scandinavia had Krampus-like creatures in them. The creatures were called Perkten, and there's a whole swath of them. I'm going to introduce you to a few more of them later. These creatures come in light and dark forms, as I was saying at the very beginning of the thing. This is the season of the two extremes, two poles, and there's light and cold. There's light and warmth, and there's dark and cold, and they are in abundance. For the next several months, they're going to be in abundance. You walk out, it's going to be really cold. You walk inside, everyone's going to be warm and cozy, and there'll be lights. And the Perkton, one of the reasons that Krampus got paired with St. Nicholas is a Christianized version of a pagan tradition. One of the reasons is, we've got the good cop, we've got the bad cop. And there's that sense of balance, and it's really it's a way of really personifying what the season is about. Those two extremes. As I said, he was exclusively a Germanic creature, and this went through. He kind of got de-emphasized. That Lords of Misrule thing I was telling you about earlier, where people, the thing that started caroling, where people go out and party and disturb people. That was great in the early feudal society. By the time Tudor England came along, that started getting de-emphasized and then outright banned. Henry VIII stopped the whole Lords of Misrule thing, for example. And in Germany, it became that level of weird folklore became de-emphasized in the 20th century in Germany. There was some ruler somewhere that just completely banished Krampus stories because it didn't suit his modern urban agenda. The whole Reich would not have been very Krampus friendly. So he was actually banned during the 1930s by the ascending political power. He was rediscovered by punks, actually. German punks were looking to re-establish themselves to try and rebuild their identity in that 30 years post-war period. It's like, what is it to be German? And they started reaching back, and they espoused this. So there's a lot of heavy metal Krampus stuff going around the place, and they started to do Krampus parades again in the late 1990s. Krampus, American Krampus, started to happen about 20 years ago. Up until then, it had been exclusively a German thing. But then this graphic designer in San Francisco, a fellow called Monty Beecham, collected artwork from all over the place, and he came across and then started to expand on a collection of Krampus postcards like this. Many of the other images were on this tree here, you can look at it later. And he published a book of these things. Very nice. He's a graphic designer. He lived in San Francisco. It was the early 2000s. It was a thing to do. He published this thing. It was Chronicle Books Book now, and it garnered some interest. It was funky. It was creepy. It was unusual, and it was a very highly stylized form of art. So this book became very popular, and right about that time, people were getting a little tired of a rather saccharine 1950s Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman. Christmas was veering a little bit towards the sweet and saccharine and light and tinselly, and it was starting to lose that balance of the dark in the lore. And so it just started to develop. It developed initially on the West Coast, and Philadelphia, they call it the Parade of Spirits now out in Liberty Lands. There's a woman called Amber Dorco Stopper, and her husband and her family started this thing out in Liberty Lands, in Liberty Heights. And that became a model for a whole lot of Krampus events about 12 years ago, before the movie came out or anything like that. A lot of people were paying a visit to Liberty Lands and went, "This is great, we want to do this in our town." And I know for a fact that Baltimore started doing it, because I was there for when they started doing it in Baltimore. Asbury Park, they also have a Krampus event, and it started to spread out. This year, for some reason, there's I don't know, within driving distance, there's probably a dozen Krampus events, if you can get to them. I've done 2 so far. I'm going to do another one on next weekend. And I've had to abandon some old friends who say, "Come to ours." It's like, can't do it, there's too many of them now. So Krampus is really starting to, sort of get some traction. It helped when the movie Krampus came out, the Tony Collette thing, and that was about a decade ago. I remember the first one we did in Baltimore, we had maybe 30 or 40 people. And then when the movie came out, we did a count, we stopped counting at 450. And this was tricky because this was not a parade. We didn't have permits. We had a bunch of people dressed as Krampus, a bunch of people with horns on, and we dressed as St. Nicholas with a mitre on. And it was like, we got to get these people down the street, hundreds of people down the street, and not get arrested. And it was like, okay, if any policeman, any authority figure comes along and asks who's in charge, say the Krampus. And Matt, take your hat off. It was like, that's Krampus. That's really starting to take some.
What was the name of the movie?
Krampus?
It was called Krampus.
It was called Krampus.
Actually, it wasn't a bad film. I'm not gonna knock it. Much better than Krampus was another film that came out the same year, and it was a Canadian film, and it was one of those horror films that it's got like 5 stories and they're all loosely woven together. And it was called, unimaginatively, it was called A Christmas Horror Story. It had a ghost story in it, it had a foundling story about a changeling story. It had Santa Claus and zombie elves. Zombie elves with Tourette's. I mean, they were foul-mouthed elves. And a Krampus. And that was a terrific story, and the whole thing was woven together with a radio show. And the radio host was William Shatner. So that's a cool movie, American horror. No, not an American horror story, a Christmas Horror Story. Canadian film. It was about 10 years ago it came out. So that's Krampus. And it's now become, there's an American Krampus, which is broad, the American Krampus tradition now. And it draws on some of the original, there's some whimsy to it. There are different flavors. There's some kind of kinky ones, very, very adult. And then there are some that are children friendly, and there's some kind of heavy metal punk style ones as well. So it runs the gamut, as it would because of these various different sources where it came from. But he is not the only monster around the season. I've collected between 10 and 22. You'll see why there's that range from various different mostly European sources. But I'm going to run through them, and you'll see some of the themes emerging that I've been talking about already with these characters. And I'll start with a Pennsylvania German thing. It came from Germany originally. It's big amongst the Pennsylvania Germans. Every time I talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, my grandmother used to talk to us about, well, not him, about the Belsnickel. If you saw, Dwight Schrute on the Office, he Belsnickel. Remember that? You remember that episode? That was pretty good, actually. It was a pretty decent representation of what he is. He's got the whip, he's got the sack, he's got the accoutrements of Krampus, but he's a lot gentler. It's the kind of thing, he's got the whip, but he'll just go like that. He'll just scare kids with it. He'll roll apples towards them or something like that, and when they go for the apples, he'll pretend to come after them with a whip. And it's like a game of chase with the Belsnickel. And it happens at like family parties, and so everything's going on, and then the tallest, fattest uncle will go take care of the horses, and then a couple of minutes later there'll be a rap at the door, a rap at the window, and this creature's going to come on with this mask on and all these furs. Belsnickel is, linguistically speaking, Belsnickel is, the nickel part is St. Nicholas, so it's from Nicholas. And the bells part is either a corruption of pelts for fur or bell. I think probably it really means Nicholas in furs is what Belsnickel is. So he's kind of a St. Nicholas type figure in furs, and this is what he does. He carries the whip, but he just uses it a little bit of a thrill, a little bit of a scare. And he basically, gets kids to recite their catechism or whatever. Have you been a good kid? Tell me what you learned in school, and then he'll give you a reward. And then, I don't know whether you've been a good kid or not, and he'll roll out. So and they know what's coming. They've got to get the thing and avoid the web electrically. But as he looks, it's quite a gentle, avuncular kind of a thing. Not so the French equivalent. Père Fouettard is just pervy. He's got the same accoutrements, but there's just this is a really good illustration of what Père Fouettard is about. Père Fouettard means whip daddy. There's just no way of sugarcoating this. There's just something wrong with this guy. On occasions, we're in a library, we won't do this, but sort of the idea is to get that "We Will Rock You" thing going on. He will flog you, and that's what Père Fouettard is about. French, odd, strange. You know this, Mark. The French are just strange.
Oh yes, yeah.
He may be pervy, but he's not like lethal. He's not lethal. The Yule cat is lethal. This is Icelandic. Way north, right on the cusp of the Arctic Circle. And the Yule cat, or Jólakötturinn, is a fantastic folkloric character. Like many people from Iceland, Björk sings a song about Jólakötturinn. She actually recorded this thing, and it's like a hurdy-gurdy music in the background, so you get that kind of, and then she sings these strange Icelandic words over the top of it. The Jólakötturinn will, on Christmas Eve, will hunt you down and kill you if you're not wearing new clothes. And the reason for this is, it's Iceland. It's weird up there. It's a land of fire and ice, and they have about 3 hours of daylight during the winter months, and it just turns their heads a bit. Realistically speaking, I think it's probably, in terms of folk life, it's probably this business of take care of your house, take care of yourself, make sure your clothes don't have holes in them, because it's cold outside, there are wolves, there are feral cats. This season will kill you if you do not take care of yourself. So there's that subtext to it. So it's not quite as random as it sounds. But in Iceland, if you do not wear new clothes around Christmas Eve, then the Yule cat will get you. I also think it's probably used by Icelandic moms so the kids don't roll their eyes when they get new socks.
Sounds like it could have been set up by a local department store.
That's what I was thinking, a retail, right.
There may well be a little gloss of it on there. That's the Yule cat. Not the only Yule animal that there is. There's also the Yule goat. Jólapuki. Jólapuki is actually a generic kind of a generic name for a Christmas spirit. But it's in goat form. There is a Yule goat, and this is a Swedish thing. There is actually a famous representation, as with the Phoenixville Firebird. There is a tradition of building a goat sculpture around Christmas, and of making a big bonfire of it. That whole darkness and cold and the fire and light theme that just runs through the whole season. The Yule goat is like that. I can't remember the name of the town, and even if I could, I would mispronounce it because Swedish is tricky. But there is the Yule goat. he's not dangerous in the same way that the Yule Cat is, but he's really judgmental. It's like, yeah, he'll look at your Christmas decorations or the state of your house, and it's like, is that all you got? You're gonna have to try a little better. So trying that my grandmother or half the teachers and members of my family when I was growing up said, you can do better, you can do better. That's the Yule Go vibe. Yule Cookie, by the way, is also used for any Christmas spirit. Has anyone ever seen the movie Rare Exports? Yeah, that's a wild
What's it
one.
called?
Rare Exports. It's probably about a decade old, and it's a wild one. They talk about the subtitles use the term Santa or Father Christmas for this word Yule Cookie. It really means just the Christmas spirit, and in Rare Exports, the conceit is that there are like wild Santa animals running around the place, and they wind up cleaning them off and dressing them up and sending them out to department stores, which explains a lot about what more Santas are going through. So Yule Cookie, it means Yule spirit or Christmas spirit, and on top of the goat there is a representation very like the ghost of Christmas Present, which is another type of Christmas spirit. Okay, we're now going to move into very peculiar territory. This is practiced 2 shires over from where I grew up in Wales. I'm from England. 2 shires over is Wales, and they have this tradition called Mari Lloyd, and that is indeed how that cluster of letters is pronounced. Welsh is an odd language, but fortunately my best mate's parents were Welsh when I was growing up, so Mari Lloyd is how it's pronounced. It's almost like Mari Lloyd. And Mari is mare, so female horse, and Lloyd is grey. So it's the old grey mare is basically what this is. In that spirit of caroling, wassail, and mumming, Welsh people stick a horse's skull on a stick, decorate it with ribbons, wrap a sheet around it, and have another stick to articulate the jaw. They will then knock on your door any time around the Christmas season. Should you be foolish enough to open the door, you will be regaled with what could best be described as a rap battle. They will come up with a poem saying, essentially in Welsh, hey, we're really hungry, let us in and feed us and give us a beer. And the idea is that you then have to respond in verse, no. And then the Mari Lloyd will come back with another verse saying, no, seriously, we're hungry, it's cold out here, our fingers are cold, let us in and give us some food and beer. And you have to come back with something a little more elaborate, and also in verse form saying no. And this goes on until one side caves in and says, oh, all right then. And and the Mari Lloyd will either go away or will be invited in for food and drink. It's peculiar, but it falls into that folk tradition of making sure your neighbours are there. And also, we've just run out, you've got a cup of sugar kind of a thing. We've run out of beer, but we're really thirsty. How about letting us in and we'll return the favour. It's that kind of, communal living kind of a thing. It's slightly more involved than, sort of like offering Christmas cookies or caroling and getting a mince pie. But it's basically the same thing, except it's got this Welsh spin that involves horse skulls. What can I say?
So do they kill horses in order to do this, or they just have
Oh,
to
no,
have skulls lying around?
Have you ever been to Wales? It's pretty harsh there. The horses die by themselves. And they, unlike in France, they don't eat horse anywhere in England. oh, sorry, this is probably a gross thing to say, but you know, so you can buy horse steaks all over France, and if you do not know the language well enough, this is where this is becoming useful to you, Mark. If you don't know the language well enough and you see burger de cheval on the menu, don't eat it. It's not a fancy type of burger, it's a horse steak. So, you know, continue your studies, kids. And so, yeah, that's the epic rap battler, that is the Murray Lloyd. The tradition, the season goes on a long while. In the Christian calendar, it goes on essentially from St. Nicholas's Day to Twelfth Night. It's the festival of the kings, where the three wise men supposedly reached Bethlehem finally and brought their gifts to the baby. In a lot of traditions, they stopped off along the way, the three wise men coming from the east, and they stopped off and asked and tried to, you know, get some recruits to come along. This is not a Russian thing, but in Russia there's the babushka who does almost exactly what this northern Italian folkloric character, La Befana. La Befana, the kitchen witch. In the lore, she was sweeping a house, and the three wise men came along and, you know, asked her to use the bathroom or something, and said, "Hey, we're going to Bethlehem. You know, the Lord and Saviour's down there." And La Befana says, "Well, that sounds great. Let me just finish sweeping up, and I'll join the party." And by the time she finished sweeping up and getting a little gift for the baby, by the time she was finished, the three wise men had gone, and she is basically been wandering ever since, looking for the baby. And there's a babushka legend in Russia and Ukraine that has the same basic premise. In northern Italy, La Befana will come along and she will come and sweep your house and check and see that everything's all right, and then she will leave little treats for the kids. And one of the treats that she gives is this stuff called carbone dolce. It's like sweet coal, and it's basically rock candy that's black. Oh. And this carbone dolce is a big treat for little kids on 12th night. So it's like that season of gift giving goes on a long way until the Industrial Revolution comes along and says you got 2 days, 1 day if you work retail. And so, yeah, that's La Befana.
I find it interesting that there's the cross, the crucifixion in there. So it's like has she wandered all this time until after he's dead?
Yeah, she's a timeless character.
Yeah.
She goes through time. I don't know what she does when it's not 12th night, but the idea is that she is a wandering spirit, okay, and that she will show up magically on that one day and spread like the last vestiges of holiday cheer. But yeah, this is all very, I mean, I don't know where the original folkloric idea comes from, but it very much has a Christianized stamp on top of it. So yeah, she's just wandering around, and that's what she's there for. Frau Perkter, on the other hand, we're getting into the housekeeping spirits here. Frau Perkter, I mentioned earlier that class of light and dark alpine spirits are called Perkter, and Frau Perkter is one of them. And it's like the lady spirit is essentially what her name means. She has the whole duality of the season is built into her head. She is dark, ugly and harsh on one side, and radiant and beautiful and warm and light on the other side. She's got that Janus arrangement where she's got like two heads, she's facing backwards and forwards. She comes into your home, as does the La Befana, and does a housekeeping check basically, which again goes back into that folkloric theme of making sure that people are keeping their house, they're keeping up their order of their house so that they can survive the season. But she's German, she's Germanic, so it gets twisted. She comes in, she will clean the house, but if there's too much trash, she'll cut you up and then stuff it into your guts. It's really unpleasant. But this is what she does. This is one of these characteristics of that class of spirit.
Could you repeat what she does? She cuts you up and then what?
You really like this group.
No.
I speak
just went
really
by
fast.
so fast.
The parts that I find really distasteful, I speak really
Right.
fast. So
Yeah.
I understand why you're asking. Yeah, if there's too much trash, if you don't keep a good house, be warned. Frau Perkter will come along. She will slice you up and put the trash in your gut and sew you back up again. It's really encouraging people to keep a good house. There's a kind of a Perkten light version of this. These are the Schnabel Perkten. And you can see the one on the left has got a pair of
Oh, yeah.
they look like a pair of shears. There's some rushes that are tied and hinged. And they will come into, go into pubs. During the daylight hours, they'll go into pubs. And they're very benign. They will come along and pretend to sweep up, and then come along and just give you a little bit of a pinch with the shears there, just to say, oh, you better take care of things here. They're much more fun. And they are, basically they're, men or women dressed up in like these shapeless dresses with like beaks on them. It's a kind of a Hieronymus Bosch, weird creature kind of a look to them. And they walk around pretending to shear and then pretending to sweep. And they have this chant. They usually come in pairs, and they'll just be going around going ga 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 ga. And two people coming into your pub or your restaurant or your house going ga 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 ga, pretending to sweep and pretending to pinch you with a pair of shears. The underlying horror of what they're actually threatening you with is pretty awful, but the way in which they do it is a lot lighter than with Frau Perkter, who is sort of gruesome. So that's the Schnabel Perkten. I rather like the Schnabel Perkten. But yeah, they're nice. And if we go back up to Iceland, much less nice is Grilla. Look at that.
Yeah.
She will eat you. Grilla, how can I put this? Well, okay. The Krampus will go after you if you're a bad kid. The Schnabelperkter will go after you if you're a bad housekeeper. Grilla will go after you because you're delicious. There's no rhyme or reason to it. This is one of those creatures out in the woods or wherever, out in the plains, out in the mountains, who's just there as a generic threat. It's like the wild creatures in the woods. They don't mean it. It's in their nature. They will eat you. And in its history of being colonized, Iceland at one point was fell under the rule of Denmark, and the king of Denmark outright banned Grilla stories. They were too demoralizing, which left the poor Icelandic people with 3 hours of daylight for 3 months out of the year and nothing to fill them with. And so, resourceful as they are with very few resources in their country, they said, Grilla and Lepeludi, the troll, have these kids, the Yule lads. And there are 13 of them. And they will come starting on Friday, starting on the 12th of December. One of them will come every day, clear up until Christmas Eve. At which point, they'll all hang around town for a couple of days, and then one by one they'll go. So by 12th night, starting on the 12th of December, and by the 12th night, they'll all be gone. And there's this slow build. Instead of, cutting you open and, or, sort of like whipping you, flogging you, putting you in a sack, they'll do things like, they'll sneak into your sheepfold and milk your sheep, and then run off with the milk. or they'll go into your dairy and drink your skyr, which is this kind of yogurt. Or they'll get your old pants. This guy down here, he's my favourite, Stuva, he comes on the third day. Stuva will get your pens and he will gnaw the crusty bits off them. And that's his superpower. You know, this is what he does. So they do relatively harmless, dumb little things. So the King of Denmark, who's at this point occupying the country, yeah, he can hardly complain about that. But you know, there are 13 of these things. This guy on the side here, Luca guy, he will just stare in at your windows and sting them up. Other ones will steal the sausages from your smokehouse. And my favourite of the Yule-led characters is a guy called Character Sneaker, and he comes on Christmas Eve, and he will run around and steal all your half-burned candles, and then run off and eat them. Hardly a monstrous thing to do, but that's these days actually the end of the monsters that I want to present to you. So what I will do now is wrap up and ask if you've got any questions, and I'm sure you will. So that's it. And there are 13 Yule lads, which is why we had between 10 and 22 characters. Like I lumped them all into one, but basically 10. So that is 23 characters plus St. Nicholas. And there's a lot of questions to be asked. And there's one already, yes.
So I'm wondering how, I saw what kind of depictions you gave, and one of them was clearly people were dressed up with beaks, you know, and so, and then you did some things that were printed obviously, like, you know, postcards. Okay, so they're genuine. When you go back into much, you know, the 1600s to 600s, you know, you went through all of history. There were some depictions that people were handing out little, you know,
no, there were
books or
verbal
folktales.
descriptions. This was a pretty
How
mostly.
did we know what they looked like?
Just by verbal tradition, and yeah. So if you, they weren't in illuminated manuscripts. These are folkloric creatures for the most part. There is no way. It's like, how do we know what Jesus looked like? You look like whatever painting in the Renaissance, or whatever icon from the 600s. It's no one knows what they look like really, and so they have their descriptions, and like with anything, you know, in a different society as these things move around, they get a different vibe to them.
So if there was a pictorial descriptions on how they had their force was through the verbal tradition, that people told these stories and said, you know, she's coming then,
Yep.
and this is what's going to happen.
Absolutely. You know, if you're going to costume up, and people did in a lot of these cases, you costume up with whatever you've got around. Quite what they folded into the beaks to make the Schnabelperks, I don't know, but there's like odd collections of rags or furs or whatever. There's this kind of a motley tradition of in the Lords of Misrule, people would just like sew together rags and put them on. The Belsnickel could be it could be just any scraps of fur and some kind of mask to conceal the face. So each family will probably have a different looking Belsnickel, and it would be whatever your drunk uncle could piece together. Yes, you have a question too.
So did people try to act these out, like the Yule lads? I mean, that's something people could actually do. These are folklores, right?
Mm-hmm.
But did people try to act out the Yule lads?
In Iceland, they do. They do. A lot of them have got like what they call the Coca-Cola Santa hats on, and then they just act things out. Weirdly enough, I just did an event in media where I've written a book about the Yule lads, but it's like a poem for each of them. It's like a book of days kind of a thing. And I used it in a kindergarten class that I was taking care of for a while. And in that run-up between the holidays, anybody who works in a school, in that run-up to the holidays, kids get progressively crazier. We had this like focused moment where today's Yule lad is, and then we have like colouring pages. But as we were reading them, the kids would act them out. There's one guy. He has a big stick with a hook on the end of it, which he fishes down your chimney, and whatever's cooking on the fire down below, he sneaks it up. And this was the favourite of the kindergarten class that I worked this with. Here he is, Cat Croaker, and he's got his little stick there. And by the end of the season, we do like one a day, and so okay, what does Stuva look like? And they'll sit down there and play act with the bowls. But just because of the way my friend Amelia, who's a children's librarian in Towson, Maryland, the way she drew that, it's like I had a row of kindergartners going, being Cat Croaker. So they can very much be acted out. And we did. We had like a party in a Krampus event party in a bar in Media on Thursday, and we basically had people with like improv props acting out all these things. It's great fun. The guy that steals the milk from the sheepfold, he wears a bowl on his head. So you get somebody in a bar with a bunch of tables out there, people are eating meals, and this person's running around with a bowl on his head, and there's somebody else with a like a sheep hat on. And they run around with this bowl, and then they go, and they're frantic like sheep milking gestures, and then takes off the hat, the bowl hat, and then turns around and there's a milk jug there. Runs off with the milk in the bowl. That's actually a lot of fun, that particular thing. Right, so what else do we have? So,
are there any correlations then between elves and Yule lads, or any creatures?
Well, the Yule lads they're a weird group because their mother's an ogre and their father's a troll. And they're lads. Yolasvania is what they call them. I'm not sure whether the Yolas part is Yule. I'm not sure what the Vania means because my Icelandic is very rusty. I don't know Icelandic. They have this kind of elfish, impish character to them. So, they're not explicitly like North Pole elves. I'm still not quite sure how Santa became a right jolly old elf. It's a little, but I think the folklore in that particular poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," I think the folklore is seriously, sort of like, it's just a stew of ideas thrown in there and made into something palatable for children. So I couldn't tell you, but good question. All right, anybody else? Oh, no. Yes.
So
I'm cutting you off at this, by the way. You've got too many questions. I'm sorry, carry on.
I started to get, clearly this, a big part of what's necessary to conduct life in, hardship conditions, but actually also just social cooperation is a management issue. Can we maybe put it that way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So society has to figure out how to kind of, grow kids up who would otherwise be savages and discipline them and get them into social cooperative kind of roles. And so it's, clear also that you made the point, it's going to be also by fear and these admonishments that you will have this dire consequence and we will shape behavior there.
Well, a lot of these traditions, of course, started under imperial domination from another culture, and in the feudal society, which was a highly structured, highly rule-based, here's your place. You are a peasant, and that's all you'll ever be. You are a merchant, and the lord of the manor is the be-all and end-all. The social contract, actually, of the peasant with the lord of the manor is a lot of what drove the wassailing tradition, that caroling thing where you got a whole bunch of peasants. You've given your 25% of whatever you gave to the land, or you've retained 25% or whatever. what the land produced. Winter comes along, you go up to the big house because your food's run out. It is very much a part of it was very much a part of a social structure. I didn't want to get too dry and academic about it, but it really was. It was a highly structured. The feudal society lasted for quite a while because it was so well structured and had that safety valve that the people at the bottom of the tree are taken care of by the lord of the manor to the extent that it is possible. So banging on the door of the big house and you know, doffing the cap and playing a little play or singing them a song, that was part of the social contract. It's like there's like these little vestiges of it that still exist in society today, to the extent that we still do have caroling, and I'm not sure it's died out quite a bit, I think, in most places, but it used to be everywhere. Except, yeah, when there was a large migration, as I was saying earlier, a large migration to the United States, they couldn't accommodate all these different cultures and their traditions in a completely different thing, because they're mutually exclusive, you know, things. And there wasn't that lord of the manor figure. There was just the big house up the road. They didn't really owe anything to the people down the bottom, because it was structured, the society was structured in a different way. We can still go out and have fun with these creatures because they're there, and why not celebrate them? But just only understanding that's where they come from.
I wanted to speculate with you when we covered all this, you know, moral and social control sort of, you know, things that drive this, why it's lasted so long. It just exists in so many cultures. But apparently, I'm going to ask you, because I know you can fill this on in, another big aspect contributing to this is that it's entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's fun, and the poetry and the storytelling and the little, you know.
What else are you going to do? There's no podcasts. You know, there's no, well, yeah, so to the extent that many of these people aren't literate either. Also, you got to fill your day with something. That, I have brought you to the end of our time together with that. However, I'm sticking around until Mark kicks me out. And I've got a bunch of books over here related to some of that. I've also got, because it's Christmas and Monsters, I've also got this thing that I did. It's a comic book that a friend of mine illustrated called Christmas Night of the Living Dead, which is about zombies at Christmas. They're not folklore. This is just some junk I made up with a couple of friends. But that's about it, really. Yeah, come by, have a chat with me. I've got books. Let's go.